The Holy Gospel according to Luke. Then Jesus told them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor had respect for people. In that city there was a widow. She kept coming to him and saying, "Grant me justice against my accuser." For a while he refused. But later he said to himself, "Though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, yet because this widow has kept bothering me, I will grant her justice, so that she may not wear me out by continually coming." And the Lord said, "Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God grant justice to his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?" The Gospel of the Lord. Well, the setting here is, once again, someone who is on the margins, a widow. This widow is pleading with an unjust judge, and it really mirrors the first century judicial system under the Roman rule. Local judges often acted without regard to anybody. Poor individuals, like widows, like orphans and others, they didn't have anybody to support them. They didn't have any what we call patronage. They were vulnerable, especially vulnerable to exploitation. In Jewish tradition, widows were symbolic of those who were marginalized. We think about the Hebrew Bible and the widow of Zarephath, or uh, the uh, the widow who um, you know cries out for the life of her only child, or all these. The widows were symbols for them. No one to protect them in a society where you had to have a man to protect you, to give you some kind of covering. That's a whole other discussion. And yet the Hebrew Bible continually calls for their protection. Think about Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 18. Luke's gospel often elevates such people. And all of this aligns with his broader concern for the oppressed. Pardon me. It's Luke who will talk more about widows and only children and orphans and all those who found themselves in need of protection. Pardon. The framing that Luke uses here, especially in verse 1, introduces the parable with a moral. The moral: always pray and not lose heart. No matter what's happening to you, keep praying, keep before God. And that, again, frames the narrative as a lesson in perseverance. It's not just about justice. In fact, justice is kind of a peripheral theme. No, persevere. Scholars have seen a disconnect between the parable itself and this framing of the parable. The widow's success doesn't come from divine justice, but from wearing down the judge. It raises questions about whether God is being compared to the unjust judge, or is he being contrasted with this unjust judge? But that's not really the theme either. God's not the central character in this parable. the woman is, the widow is. This woman who is persevering in her cry for justice. Jesus is using persistence as a mark of discipleship. Some readings will emphasize the widow's resilience and her agency, and she models this active form of discipleship, not some kind of passive piety, but she challenges the traditional, frankly, gendered expectations of prayer and submission. And the parable ends with this rather rhetorical question: will the Son of Man find faith on earth? And this is giving us some kind of an eschatological urgency. When are these things going to take place? God's justice, it may be delayed, but it's coming. Think about last week, our reading from Habakkuk in chapter 2, in the first 4 verses, when it said, hey, look, even if the vision waits or seems to tarry, wait for it. It is surely coming. Persevere. That theme is carried on into our gospel reading today from Luke. The faithful must persist, even when it looks like divine action is slow in coming, even if it seems like the action is never coming. Think about the passage in Hebrews when it's talking about the great heroes of the faith, that all these people, they believed the promise, even though they died without ever having seen it. Still, they believed. They were persistent. Some scholars think that the original parable and its framework, as we have it, were originally separated, only to be joined by Luke to serve his theological goals. Others, myself included, see that this tension is intentional. This tension invites us, the readers, to wrestle with the nature of divine justice. Sometimes it looks like it doesn't come. Again, I've told you the story before, but think about the tribunal held by the rabbis in Auschwitz, in the extermination camp, when they put God on trial. They said, God has abandoned the chosen people. They pronounced God guilty and then concluded with, and now it's time for evening prayers. And yet we read that from our last Sunday, that even when we are faithless, God remains faithful. Even when we bail out on the promise, God still keeps the promise. It may be slow, but it's coming. We have to wrestle with this. How do these things, how read the Psalms? Oh Lord, how long are you going to allow the wicked to triumph? How long before we find any kind of relief? Again, Habakkuk, Lord, we just want relief from these Assyrians. The Lord goes, well, okay, but I'm going to use the Chaldeans to do it. And you haven't known trouble till you've seen them. Sure enough. And it was the Chaldeans, the Neo-Babylonians, who, under Nebuchadnezzar, destroyed Jerusalem. The analogy between God and the unjust judge is deliberately provocative by Luke. And it kind of functions as a one of those arguments, the how much more argument. When Jesus in one place, remember, says, if you being evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more does your Father in heaven, remember that. And if even a corrupt judge in Luke's account here will yield to persistence, how much more will a just God respond to faithful prayer? The widow is a symbol of the oppressed. Like so many of our gospel readings in recent weeks and months, this widow represents the poor, again, I use the word marginalized, the voiceless, those who have to struggle against an unjust system just to be heard. Sure, the parable critiques the delay and the indifference of earthly powers, but the widow's relentless demand for justice mirrors the cry of the oppressed all over the world, where prayer isn't just a passive act of piety, it's a form of resistance. To say the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. For Dietrich Bonhoeffer, that prayer became the battle cry of resistance against the Nazis. Sure, he paid with his life for it, but he persisted. He resisted. And then comes the final question. Will the Son of Man find faith on earth? And we have to read that as a challenge to the church. Are we going to stand with the poor and persist in hope, even when justice itself seems so absent? Are we going to stand with them? This is something we have to wrestle with right now in our own time. In 2025, who would have thought that the poor were being ground under the heel of an oppressor's boot, even in our country? I'm not just talking about political powers, I'm talking about corporate powers. The feminist theologians will also tell us that, and they're right, that the widow is a model of female agency. She defies these social expectations. She's assertive. She's vocal. She refuses to be silenced. Not to be chauvinistic, but those are qualities that are often discouraged in women historically. Not supposed to be heard, supposed to be in the back room. I think about in language, even in Japanese, the mother of the house is called okasan, which basically means the one in the back room. Particularly galling to modern day women, as it should be. And again, prayer becomes protest. The widow's prayer isn't just spiritual, it is political. She is embodying a theology of resistance. Her prayer becomes this form of protest against unjust structures, whatever those structures may be, patriarchal, economic, all of them bound together. But we see Jesus as responsive to the marginalized. The contrast, and here I go with contrast, between God and this unjust judge, the contrast between them underscores this divine solidarity with those who've been dismissed or ignored by society. So many of those who have been shoved to the sides just want to be heard. They want to be seen. Because how can you help somebody and how can you expect any kind of help if no one even recognizes you? May God give us the eyes to see, the ears to hear, the cries, the outcries, the plight of those who've been oppressed by unjust systems, whether they be economic or chauvinistic. God, let me see what's going on. Let me see the plight of people. Let me take my eyes off of myself and look at my sisters and my brothers and little ones who just need help. God, may we never be so proud that we just refuse to look. God save us from that. Thanks be to God.